Picture waking up in a home where there is no bedroom door, no bathroom door, no front door, maybe not even a wall you can fully close. Someone could walk past your sleeping space at any moment. Your family is nearby, your neighbors are nearby, and yet somehow you still have a private life. That sounds impossible today, but the real answer is far stranger. For much of human history, privacy was not something created by four walls and a lock. It was something people created through distance, timing, behavior, and social rules. You lowered your voice, you moved away from the group, you waited until other people were asleep. You used darkness, curtains, hides, partitions, and the layout of your shelter. And sometimes you simply expected other people to understand that you wanted to be left alone. So what did ancient humans actually do when there was no door to close? The first thing to understand is that there was never one universal ancient home. Different human groups lived in very different environments. Some lived in caves, some built temporary shelters, some lived in huts. Later, some settled into permanent houses with separate areas for sleeping, working, cooking, storage, and social activities. So the answer depends heavily on where and when you lived. But for many small-scale communities, a house was not designed to give every person a completely separate private room. And that changes the meaning of privacy. Think about the modern home. You walk inside. You close the front door, click. The outside world disappears. That tiny sound is an incredibly powerful privacy technology. A closed door tells everyone, this space is unavailable right now. But if there is no door, that message has to come from somewhere else. Sometimes it comes from the layout of the shelter, sometimes from custom, and sometimes from a simple understanding between people: don't intrude. Imagine a small community living close together. Several shelters sit near one another. People share food. They care for children. They make tools. They sleep close to one another. There may be no hallway separating one family from another. There may be no bedroom where someone can disappear for an hour. But that does not automatically mean everyone is constantly watching everyone else. Humans are remarkably good at recognizing social boundaries. You can stand a few feet from someone and still understand that they don't want to interact. You see their posture, you hear their tone, you notice that they have turned away, you learn their routine, you recognize when a conversation is private, and you learn when not to interrupt. This is where the idea of personal space becomes important. The anthropologist Edward T. Hall later studied how humans use physical distance to communicate social relationships. Step closer, and the interaction can become more intimate. Step away, and you create distance. That doesn't tell you exactly how a prehistoric community behaved, but it helps explain something much broader about human behavior. Space itself can communicate, and humans don't need a wall to understand a boundary. Want to have a private conversation? Walk a little farther from the group. Need to change clothes. Find a less visible part of the shelter. Want to sleep without being disturbed? Choose a corner or a separate area. Need to get away from an argument? Walk outside. The architecture does not always create the boundary. Sometimes your behavior does, and sometimes the people around you recognize that boundary without being asked. That becomes especially interesting when you look at early permanent settlements. Take Çatalhöyük in what is now Turkey. The Neolithic settlement contained densely packed houses with unusual layouts. People often entered houses from above rather than through the kind of street-facing front door you would recognize today. At first glance, that sounds like the opposite of privacy, but the houses were not simply open spaces where everything happened everywhere. Different areas could have different functions: sleeping areas, working areas, storage spaces, cooking areas, raised platforms. Walls and changes in elevation could limit visibility. The arrangement of the house could separate activities even when there was no modern hallway and bedroom system. In other words, architecture was already doing some of the work that a door does today, just differently. You did not always have to close something. Sometimes you simply positioned yourself somewhere else. And that distinction matters. Modern privacy is often built directly into architecture. Ancient privacy could be built into behavior and social expectations. Think about what that would mean during an ordinary day. Everyone is awake, you stay with the group. The camp is busy. You walk somewhere quieter, someone is telling a private story. You move away from the fire. Everyone is asleep. You suddenly have more solitude. The key resource is not always a physical room. Sometimes it is timing. Humans are extremely good at using timing to create privacy. And if you grew up in a society where that was normal, you would not necessarily experience it as a constant loss. You would simply learn different expectations. That's an important mistake to avoid when imagining ancient life. You cannot take a modern person, remove modern technology, and assume the result would feel like ancient life. No refrigerator, no electricity, no phone, no door. That would be a modern person experiencing deprivation, but someone born into a society where doors were uncommon would have grown up with very different expectations about space, access, and social behavior. Their world would not necessarily feel like a broken version of yours. It would be normal, and privacy would be part of that normal world. But what about something more practical? What happened when you needed to do something that really required privacy, like changing clothes, or using the bathroom, or being intimate with another person? The answer was not one universal trick. Different cultures used different solutions. People could move away from communal areas. They could use secluded locations. They could take advantage of darkness. They could use coverings, partitions, or screens, and they could rely on social rules about when other people should look away or stay away. Because privacy is not always about being completely alone. Sometimes it is about controlling access, who can see you, who can hear you, who can approach you, who is allowed to enter, and who is expected to wait. Those questions are much older than modern houses. They are part of human social behavior. This becomes especially obvious with intimacy. Modern homes give couples an enormous amount of architectural privacy. A closed bedroom door can separate intimate behavior from the rest of the household. Many ancient people did not necessarily have that same physical separation, but that does not mean intimate behavior happened with everyone watching. Timing mattered, location mattered, darkness mattered, distance mattered, coverings mattered, and social rules mattered. A couple could leave the main group. They could find a secluded location, they could wait until other people were asleep. The exact customs varied enormously between societies, but the important point is simple. A society does not need modern architecture to develop rules about intimate behavior. Those rules can exist even when physical privacy is limited, and the same principle applies to conflict. Imagine being angry with someone who lives only a few steps away. There is no bedroom door to slam, no private room where you can disappear. So what do? You walk away, you sit somewhere else, you go outside, you wait. Distance becomes your emotional door, and you still do versions of this today. You take a walk after an argument, you sit in your car, you put on headphones, you go to another room. You tell someone, I just need some space. The technology changed, the behavior did not. You still create distance when you need psychological space. Ancient people simply had fewer physical tools for creating that distance, but there was another side to living so close to other people: security. A home without a heavily controlled entrance was not automatically defenseless. In some close-knit communities, other people could notice what was happening around them. A stranger approaches. Someone may notice, a child cries, someone hears it, a person becomes sick, someone nearby may recognize it. A fire starts, other people can respond. The community itself can provide a form of constant social observation. That does not mean communal living was always safer. It means safety could come partly from people being close enough to notice and respond. And this reveals an important trade-off. Less physical privacy can sometimes mean more social visibility. But more social visibility can also mean more immediate support. If you fall, someone may notice. If your child wanders away, someone may notice. If something dangerous approaches, someone may warn you. Your privacy may be lower, but your social safety net may be stronger. Modern life often reverses that balance. You can close your bedroom door, lock your house, put on noise-canceling headphones, work from home, spend an entire day without physically seeing another person. You have an extraordinary amount of control over who can access you, but control can come with a cost. You can also become isolated, and this is where psychology becomes really interesting. Your brain does not only respond to physical space, it responds to social exposure. Being watched can change how you behave. You may sit differently, speak differently, become more self-conscious. Start wondering what other people think. Psychologists have studied how the presence of other people can influence attention, performance, emotion, and behavior. Now imagine growing up in an environment where other people are frequently nearby. You would have plenty of opportunities to learn subtle social signals. A glance, a pause, a change in posture, a lowered voice, someone turning away, someone walking outside. These signals can communicate something surprisingly powerful. Not right now. And children would learn those rules too. They would learn when not to interrupt. They would learn which spaces were associated with particular people or activities. They would learn that a private conversation was not automatically everyone's conversation. They would learn that physical closeness did not mean unlimited social access. That is a sophisticated system, and it helps explain something you already experience. You can feel alone in a crowded subway car. You can have a private conversation in a crowded restaurant. You can live with several people in a small apartment and still have a favorite corner where you feel left alone. Your brain is constantly drawing invisible boundaries. Ancient humans did the same thing. They simply had fewer physical structures to reinforce those boundaries, but human societies did not remain small and mobile forever. Agriculture changed daily life. In many places, people began staying in one location for longer periods. Settlements became more permanent. Population density increased. Storage became more important. Property became more important. Families became increasingly associated with particular spaces. And as settlements became more complex, architecture became more complex too. Walls became boundaries, rooms became specialized, entrances became more controlled, courtyards created semi-private areas, partitions divided activities, and eventually doors became incredibly useful. Not because humans suddenly discovered the idea of privacy. They had already been negotiating privacy for a very long time. The door simply made one part of that negotiation physical. A door can tell you exactly where one social space ends and another begins. The bedroom becomes private. The house becomes separate from the street. A shop becomes separate from a public walkway. A restricted area becomes clearly restricted. And once you have a door, you can control access with extraordinary precision. You can open it, close it, lock it, knock on it, wait for permission. That is a huge social change. But here's the twist. Modern humans often assume that more physical privacy automatically means a better life. Does it? You can close your bedroom door. You can lock your house. You can work alone all day. You can put on headphones and disappear into your own little bubble. You can control access to yourself in ways that would have been difficult for many people in earlier societies. That is incredible freedom, but it can also create a strange problem. You can become almost invisible. Nobody knows you are having a terrible day. Nobody notices that you're sick. Nobody hears you struggling. Nobody automatically walks over when you need help. Ancient communal life could have the opposite problem. Too much community, not enough solitude. Your life was harder to hide. If you were sick, other people might know. If you were grieving, other people might notice. If you were celebrating, other people might join. If you were having a terrible day, good luck pretending nobody noticed. That could be exhausting, but it could also be deeply protective. So the difference between ancient and modern life is not simply no doors versus doors. It is a different balance between privacy and connection. Modern life gives you more control over physical access. Ancient communal life often required much more negotiation with the people around you. Neither system was perfect. One could give you solitude at the cost of isolation, the other could give you connection at the cost of solitude. And that is why the question is more interesting than it first appears. When you picture an ancient human waking up without a door, don't picture someone desperately searching for the privacy you have today. Picture someone living inside a different definition of privacy. Could be a quiet corner, a dark night, a walk away from camp, a hanging hide, a lowered voice, a particular part of the shelter, or simply a look that said, "Give me a minute," and that last one should sound familiar, because you still use it. You close a door. You put your phone on Do Not Disturb. You step outside. You sit alone in the car. You tell someone, "I just need some space." The door is newer, the need is ancient. So the next time you close your bedroom door and finally get a moment alone, remember what that little wooden rectangle is really doing? It is not just separating you from the hallway, it is giving a physical form to a problem humans have been solving for thousands upon thousands of years. How do you control who can see you, who can hear you, who can approach you? And when do you get to be alone? The door did not invent privacy, it simply made one kind of privacy easier to enforce. Ancient humans already understood the need, they just couldn't always close the door.